Hey guys, it's Mike here, and in this video, I'm going to be discussing a character who was first introduced all the way back in the Buu saga of Dragon Ball Z. That was the most preeminent god that we had been introduced to at this point in the series, and not just that, but as someone who's been continually underrated in terms of his power throughout the course of history since his introduction by the fanbase. That would have to be Kaioshin, the Supreme Kai of Universe 7, and the question of just how strong is Supreme Kai? Well, in this video, I'm going to be going in depth into that and giving you the best answer I possibly can. But before I begin, I just want to tell you all about my second channel, Laughingstock Cinema, where I talk about live action movies and TV shows. I would definitely recommend going over there and checking it out if you're interested in getting more content from me and hearing me discuss other types of topics in depth. I actually just released a review for the Dark Knight trilogy where I watched all of them back to back in theaters and gave my in-depth thoughts on them. So I highly recommend checking that out, and there will be a link to Laughingstock Cinema and that video down below in the description. But with that being said, let's get into the video. So when we were first introduced to the Supreme Kai, it was made apparent that he was different from the other people that had been fought by the Z Fighters up until that point. Despite this being the Buu saga, Piccolo, Goku, and many of the others in attendance were very surprised by what they were exhibiting from Supreme Kai, where he first shows up and he's knowledgeable about both of them, or all of them, in terms of their overall power, saying that he had heard of Goku and he wanted to spar with him for quite some time, likely because of the fact that he had heard that Goku was the one who defeated Frieza and could become a Super Saiyan. He says right here now too that, of course, I have no delusions of beating you, I just want to see how strong you are. So this is something that we have to take with multiple different perspectives. Was Shin here actually saying that he already believed Goku could be more powerful than him, or was he someone who's just being kind of, let's say, humble a little bit because he wasn't trying to let on just who he was and how powerful he believed himself to be? At this point, we see them shaking hands, and we get the introduction of Shin's creepy smiles, in which he smiles right in Goku's face, very clearly displaying a little bit of arrogance, I would suppose, in terms of, feeling like he has everything completely under control, that he is the highest god at the time, and he is naturally believing himself to still be very strong and respectable compared to the other characters in terms of his position, but we'll get a lot more into that soon. Now, during this point, it seems like perhaps he was analyzing Goku on a deeper level. We see Goku's reaction here where he's kind of surprised, and then we see Shin saying, just like the rumors said, you have a fine spirit. So in different translations, this is kind of like him analyzing Goku and seeing that he is serving the better purpose for him in terms of what he wants to do with him in terms of his overall plan to stop the resurrection of Buu. However, the question is, did Shin actually get a good reading on Goku's power? It doesn't really seem like it because what we see later on. So I feel like Shin here is just assuming his power, but he doesn't necessarily have a full grasp of what Goku is capable of. But Goku himself says, I guess winning won't be so easy after all, and we even see that Vegeta's sweating here a little bit. So it's pretty clear that the characters are trying to convey that Supreme Kai is powerful, which we then go on to see and learn a little bit more of during this point in which he goes face to face with Piccolo and the two of them are meant to battle. We see Vegeta's inner monologue where he's saying, finally, we're going to see what this mysterious guy is made of. And however, when it comes time for the two to battle, Piccolo can't even power up. He can't attack him. He feels like there's this deep hesitation within him to even attempt to fight against Supreme Kai, and then he wonders who or what in the world is he. At this point, we know that Supreme Kai can read his mind. He says, you'll find out very soon. But for now, let's enjoy the game. Which leads to Piccolo forfeiting. And Supreme Kai assuming that he was the god of this planet in the past, so he's probably trying to start to figure everything out in terms of the identity of Shin. Now when Piccolo goes backstage, we see that Goku says, is he that strong, Piccolo? And what does he say in response? Yes. The difference between us is too great. Now it depends exactly on the translation here. In some other ones he's saying that he's a different higher level of order than Piccolo. In other ones, their dimensions are too great. Typically, this is in order to indicate that a character is far more powerful than them. Now, in terms of who would actually win between these two, I discussed that in a video you could see in the top right corner, where I discussed that far more in depth and compared their powers relative to one another. But with that being said, Piccolo does not want to fight Shin. And we learn a little bit more of why when Shin goes backstage and they speak, in which Piccolo asked him if he's actually the Grand Kai, the head of the 4 cardinal direction Kais that we see. He says no, and then Kibito says he's the Kaiho Shin, the Lord of Lords, the God of Gods. At this point, Piccolo freaks out because Shin is actually a higher order than he initially expected, and as a result, Supreme Kai tells him to keep it quiet. At this point, we see Piccolo saying that he heard rumors of the God of Gods, the highest one above all the Kais, and that this in turn means that he, the Kaiho Shin, is that character. So when it comes back to going back to their fight here and how he is refusing to battle against him because he's assuming that he is the Grand Kai at this point, this is basically the highest god that we would see at the time. Piccolo isn't going to want to fight the highest god of the religion, let's say, of the hierarchy in his universe. After all, that would be like us trying to fight against a monotheistic god or a Christian trying to fight against Jesus, right? So he's not exactly going to want to throw fists against his own god, right? So as a result, it makes perfect sense why he would revere him so much, because he himself was a lower god at one point when he was Kami. And also, not just that, but he also assumes that this character would be way more powerful than him and probably the other characters as well. And so not only does he have the reverence, but he also makes assumptions about Shin's power, because another thing that we need to mention here too is that at no point is it actually said that anyone there can sense the power of Supreme Kai or Kibito. We get the same thing happening later on with Babidi's henchmen, which I'll talk about soon. But the fact is that no one there seems to have the capability of actually sensing the power of Supreme Kai. Perhaps because this is the time in which Toriyama was revealing or coming up with the concept and playing around with the idea of different types of energy, and I guess more specifically, you could say even God Ki. So that would explain why Piccolo was able to get a sense from this character that he was a god, and not just that, but refused to fight him and assume that he was a higher level than anyone else. And this is something else that happens later on. When Gohan is standing face to face against Kibito, he can't necessarily sense his power. However, he thinks he's so powerful that he's going to need Super Saiyan against him. I'll talk a little bit about Kibito's power relative to Gohan a little bit as well, but the fact of the matter is that Kibito tells him to become a Super Saiyan, and he becomes a Super Saiyan 2. This is when we get a little bit more estimate about Supreme Kai's power relative to everyone there, where Vegeta says that he's not as powerful as he was back when he fought Cell in reference to Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, and Kibito here, however, says that he doesn't believe how strong he is, that he's immortal, and he shouldn't be anywhere near as powerful as this because this is putting him in the realm of the gods, the highest ones, of course. Even Shin right here says he's so much stronger than I expected, and I'm not sure that I can contain that power. However, we get to see that Shin can in fact do that because he paralyzes Gohan using his Supreme Kai abilities, which allows 2 far weaker characters, which are Spopovich and Yamu, to grab him and to steal his energy to bring it to Majin Buu, which was all a part of Shin's plan so he could follow them back to Babidi's ship and prevent Buu from being resurrected. This is when we're actually introduced to Babidi and Deborah. And at this point, we get another statement that allows us to scale Shin's relative power, in which he's saying that Deborah is incredibly powerful and he is the strongest in the demon universe comparative to the mortal realm or mortal universe, where one of the 3 Saiyans with him is the most powerful. And he believes that because the fact that he has Deborah under his command, they won't be able to win, which we have confirmed here when Vegeta says impossible to win. Is that what you want to say? And Shin doesn't say anything. He's sweating, he's concerned, because he knows how powerful Deborah is, which I'll show a lot more in depth later on. This is what leads to the first fight against Babidi's henchmen with the Z Fighters when they go into Babidi's ship and they see Pui Pui. Now, there's a really big misconception here that so many fans seem to have, where they actually think that Shin is afraid of Pui Pui. This is nonsense if you actually look at all the evidence, which I'm going to explain right now. Shin, when he sees that Vegeta is going to fight against Babidi's henchman Pui Pui first off on his own, Shin is concerned. He's not afraid because, oh no, I wouldn't be able to beat this guy. What are you doing? He's saying, you're going to fight him alone? And so the main thing that people need to keep in mind is that Supreme Kai is not actually afraid that they will be able to lose if they, let's say, gang up on Pui Pui, or that Vegeta, if he went all out, wouldn't necessarily be able to win. The thing that he's saying is more that he's afraid and concerned about Buu. The shadow of Buu is hanging over everything that's happening here, and Shin is the only person who is alive in the universe at this time who actually encountered Buu and knows just how horrifying his power is, and that you never want him to be awoken. So the entire time Shin's sweating, he's afraid not of Pui Pui or any of Babidi's fighters aside from maybe Deborah, but rather he is scared that the Z Fighters, who he views as not being as powerful as himself until he starts to see them going Super Saiyan 2 and stuff, are themselves going to get themselves killed, get themselves hurt, and allow Majin Buu to be woken up. So again, he's not afraid of Pui Pui here, and when he sees that Vegeta starts to be able to easily handle Pui Pui, we see that his concern actually starts to go down, where he's like, huh? Wow, I didn't think that Vegeta would be able to do this. And then eventually, when Vegeta actually kills Pui Pui in front of him, he's shocked by the power that Vegeta has. He's not shocked because, wow, this base form Saiyan is way more powerful than me. No, he's just shocked because he had no idea just how strong these mortals were, and he's constantly surprised by it. The same thing with Babidi. Of course, Babidi and Shin are the ones who are being shown here because they're the kind of parallel different evil and good side that are kind of going against one another. However, they're not supposed to be on the same level of power. Shin easily killed Bibidi, as far as we know, and would easily kill Babidi too in a straight up fight, just like everyone else here. Another thing to keep in mind is that Shin and no one else here is actually able to sense the power of Pui Pui or Babidi's henchmen. No one here has that ability, which is actually confirmed during the fight between Videl and Spopovich. During this, Goku is getting really bad vibes about this. In the anime, him and Vegeta are both getting those. And we see him saying right here that he thinks Videl should forfeit the fight. And what do we see Goku says right here? There's something strange about this guy. None of those hits seem to faze him at all. Not to mention, I can't sense his power. The exact same thing is the case with Pui Pui. No one actually knows how powerful Pui Pui is before Vegeta fights him. In fact, in the anime, this is made that much more apparent because the fact that Vegeta, after he starts to experience Pui Pui attacking him, literally puts his own guard down and stops even trying to block his attacks because he would just be wasting his energy doing so because he's so much stronger than Pui Pui. So during this point, Supreme Kai isn't sensing the power of Pui Pui and saying, this guy is so strong, he's stronger than me, you're going to fight him on your own? What are you talking about? No, he's actually afraid of not only Buu being woken up, but rather he's going off of the reputation of Babidi having the most powerful fighters. So he just assumes that the base Saiyans won't be able to stand a chance. The same thing happens with Yakan later on, where he is once again going off of the reputation of the monster Yakan and how powerful he is. However, in this case, he actually is correct to be concerned that Goku is fighting him on his own as base form, because it's shown that Yakan's base form, or his just power in general, is greater than Goku's base form, which we see when Gohan actually says to Goku that they should team up in order to fight against Yakan after he realizes that Goku's energy continues to get drained after he eats the light energy, which you could say right here with this statement, Dad, can I help you? And of course, Goku has a Kili rating or Kiri rating, which is a different type of power level that Babidi goes by, of 3000 as a Super Saiyan, whereas Yakan's power is 800. So naturally, if we were to go by the 50 or even higher multiplier for the Mastered Super Saiyan, this would mean that Yakan is far more powerful than base Goku. But it's only once Goku goes Super Saiyan 2 and obliterates Yakan that Supreme Kai truly realizes realizes just how outmatched he is by the Saiyans, just like Vegeta himself also realized that Goku had outmatched him. And before this, we get even further of a breakdown of the power of everyone comparative to Supreme Kai and Deborah, where Supreme Kai is saying that they don't want them to destroy the ship because if so, this will mean that it will lead to everyone being killed by Buu. Vegeta scoffs and he says, I doubt Buu is a big deal, just like Deborah. And then at this point, Vegeta explains how they would be able to defeat Deborah and that if they had fought him years ago, they would have had a much harder time because, you know, he's comparable to Cell. And this is what leads to Supreme Kai starting to recognize even more that these mortals are stronger than he is. He's saying, I can't believe it. The Saiyans are that strong. But thinking about it, Gohan was so powerful back then, what if that wasn't his full strength? So Gohan doesn't really go all out as a Super Saiyan 2 until he starts to fight Deborah, and then also when he blasts Buu's shell after he rages out and can tap into some of his even deeper rage-based reservoir of power. So it's really that Supreme Kai starts to truly realize how powerful the other Saiyans are during this point in time. And again, the biggest threats to him are Deborah and Majin Buu, rather than him being weaker than Pui Pui. And before the fight against Deborah, they cement this even further by saying that Gohan is actually the weakest out of the three of these, which is confirmed by Vegeta and Goku. And at this point, Supreme Kai finally lets everything set in, where he says, so that's why they're so confident. When they want, they can power up just like Goku did. Unbelievable. I can't believe I've been surpassed by beings from the lower world. Now, in terms of them surpassing him, just how much do they surpass him by? Well, let's actually get into some of the greater feats on display, because, like I said, the majority of what we see in the Buu Saga in general, and with regard to Supreme Kai especially, does come down to statements in, you know, how he scales comparative to this character, and the feats we see from them. That's one of the biggest problems with the Buu Saga that causes so much confusion. It's very rare where someone is like, this character is stronger than this character and stronger than this character, and then actually showing it straight up like they did in the previous arcs. That's why the power scaling can be kind of a mess here and people find it hard to suspend their disbelief. So one of the things I'll bring up first in terms of direct scaling is that when Vegeta becomes Majin Vegeta and Goku says that he'll fight him, Supreme Kai steps in the middle of them and says, you'll have to fight him over my dead body. He doesn't want Goku to do this because he doesn't want Buu to be resurrected, and so as a result, he decides to step in the middle. This is what leads to a scene in which Goku actually raises his hand to the Supreme Kai and starts charging up an attack. And I actually really love this little moment they have right here, where you could see that Vegeta himself is really surprised by this too, where you could see like that indicator for both him and Shin getting surprised with the red little flash there, and then Vegeta's shocked expression when he's seeing that Goku is raising his hand to God basically at this point in time and saying that he will in fact fight him and stop him if he has to so that he could fight against Vegeta. Now, Supreme Kai doesn't even attempt to do this. He doesn't attempt to fight Goku, he doesn't attempt to stop him, likely because he assumes that he's outmatched by Goku's power, but also even more so is that he realizes it'll be futile. Goku is going to be able to win if he went full power as a Super Saiyan 2 with certainty, and so as a result, what would be the objective here? Goku's already shown that he's going to do this fight, Vegeta has already shown it, so all Shin is going to do is stretch out the process and make it to where fighting against them would be irrelevant. But Shin hasn't given up completely, because he and Gohan are going to fight against Deborah and Babidi, and he actually seems confident that they'll be able to win in that tag team match. Now flash forward to when Buu is actually woken up, we actually get to finally see Shin's power on display when everyone fights against Buu. First off, we see that Buu easily handles Deborah, who is a character I discussed in a video in the top right corner, is actually said to be stronger than Super Perfect Cell in terms of his overall power. Now, not just that, he easily stomps him, but after this, he also easily outspeeds Super Saiyan 2 Goku, catching up to him, going in front of him, and then just taking him down very easily. This is when we finally see Supreme Kai fighting against Buu, and we see that, in the anime especially, he does an even better job fighting against him than anyone else does. He's able to hit Buu with this attack, which doesn't really hurt Buu too much, but is again still putting up a greater fight than before. We see him get clapped by Buu and knocked down into the ground. However, he still gets back up and ready to fight, and again attacks Buu. Buu uses the same attack against Supreme Kai, and then he jumps on him and squashes him, no doubt hurting his spine, internal organs, whatever internal organs a Kaioshin is supposed to have. However, at this point, Gohan catches Buu off guard and, barely does any damage to him, and once again is taken out effortlessly. However, with that being said, while weakened and on the ground, Shin still does a very powerful feat, in which he's able to destroy Buu's blast, which completely overpowered Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, and make it to where he doesn't fly off into space and die. Now later on, we get an even crazier feat from Shin, where during the fight between Vegeta and Majin Buu, after Vegeta had blasted through Buu and caused him to get really angry at everything, what ends up happening is that Buu begins to power up. It's his big power moment that he has in the English dub of the anime, and he launches this kind of omnidirectional attack at everyone, and Vegeta as a Super Saiyan 2, and what do we see during this moment? Babidi has to put up a shield, the other characters get out of the way. Vegeta as a Majin Vegeta Super Saiyan 2 braces himself, and remember, Vegeta is equal to Goku as a Super Saiyan 2 right here, and during this we see that Vegeta gets blasted away, but we also see that the weakened, hurt Shin also gets hit by the attack and survives it. During this point, Vegeta's arm is broken and busted, and so as a result, he's really hurt, as you can see. He basically tried to brace himself and tank the attack, like when Goku did that for Piccolo Jr. in the 23rd tournament. However, Vegeta is left really harmed. And even after all this damage that Shin took, we see that he's still up, he's walking around, going on his way to Gohan in order to save him. Eventually, he finally collapses on the ground and ends up being healed by Kibito. And this is what leads to him taking Gohan to the Kaioshin realm, the sacred world of the Kais, so that he'll be able to remove the Z-Sword. So again, this shows that Shin is incredibly powerful and durable, even at this point in the story, because otherwise he wouldn't have been able to survive half the things he did. A lot of people try and say that Shin is actually comparable to Goku as a Super Saiyan when he fought against Perfect Cell. This is something that is said in the El Legendario, I believe, and some other guides, but the fact of the matter is, when you actually look at the feats on display from Shin here, it seems pretty clear that he's more powerful than that. Because Mastered Super Saiyan Goku, when he fought Cell, wouldn't be able to put up this kind of fight against Fat Buu right here. He wouldn't be able to survive these attacks and tank them like Shin does to a degree and be able to keep getting back up and fighting. He would get effortlessly one shot because of just how massive the power of Buu is on display. And he certainly wouldn't have been able to stop attacks like this that sent Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, who is much stronger than Goku at that point in the story, away and destroying his attacks so he doesn't die. Now, a lot of people do try and use the example of the Z-Sword to try and say that Gohan, even as a Super Saiyan, is far stronger than Shin, or that even his base form is stronger than Shin. Because remember, Gohan, his base, is primarily the one who is wielding the Z-Sword, which comes after Shin teaches him a little bit more about his pullout game. However, Gohan has to transform, and you could even make an argument that he might be a Super Saiyan 2 here in order to remove the sword from the stone. After this, he does definitely struggle to lift the Z-Sword, which we see that Kibito can't even pick up after he had handed it over to him. Now again, remember, Gohan here thought that he would have to be a Super Saiyan in order to defeat Kibito in a fight. So a lot of people will say, well, this means that Kibito and Shin are weaker than base Gohan and base Goku, because we see Goku also lift the Z-Sword later on in the story. But again, that's not necessarily the case. For all we know, it could also be an Arthurian sort of story, kind of like, the Sword in the Stone was originally, where it isn't just about someone's physical strength, but also their worthiness to be able to pull that sword and to be able to wield it. So again, I don't quite think that this is the case, that somehow Shin and Kibito are actually weaker than the base Saiyans. You could try and argue Kibito, because Gohan didn't actually fully sense Kibito's power before he transformed, but at the end of the day, Shin has demonstrated through feats that he's way more powerful than the base Saiyans, Pui Pui and Yakan as a result. And finally, we do get to see Supreme Kai at the end of the arc actually merge merge with Kibito using the Potara fusion and become Kibito Kai or Kibito Shin. And at this point, he's saying he's so powerful that he wants to fight alongside Goku against Buu-Tanks at this point in the story. However, Supreme Kai from the many generations ago, Elder Kai, says to him that you may be much stronger than before, but you weren't much to start with, so you might as well stay still. However, when he's saying you're not much to start with, he's probably comparing him to all the other Supreme Kais from the past. Shin has been stated in the past to actually be the weakest of the Supreme Kais who fought against Majin Buu in the thousands or millions of years ago, depending upon the translation, and so naturally he wouldn't be much compared to Daikaio Shin or against the Southern Supreme Kai that Buu absorbed because his power was so great, and who must have been at least somewhat comparable to Super Saiyan 3 Goku. However, at this point you can make the argument that he might have been able to put up a good fight against the Super Saiyan 2s, or, even somewhat against Super Saiyan 3 Goku, or at the very least against Majin Buu when he first debuted in the story, or a good Buu at the end, because of the fact that he seems so confident in his powers right now and had sensed the powers of everyone leading up until this point. And on the topic of the power of all the previous Supreme Kais, one statement that we always have to see is that according to Shin, all 5 of the Kaioshin were strong enough to destroy Frieza with a single blast at the time, and 4 of them were killed by Buu. So he's including himself right there. He would be able to easily one-shot Frieza, which I showed you guys with all those feats is pretty obvious when you're actually looking at his power against Majin Buu. Now, in terms of his overall abilities, with regard to what he can do, one of the things that we see Shin doing in Dragon Ball Super a lot is that he has the ability to teleport, and we see when he's Kibito Kai at the end, Kibito Shin, he also teleports everyone back to the Earth so that they're able to, go about living their lives on that plane. Don't have to, get some kind of interdimensional cube to go back there like we see in the Universe 6 tournament. However, at no point in the story up until this point does it indicate that Shin actually had those abilities, and rather that was more something that his attendant or assistant Kibito had to teleport. So I feel like we probably would have seen Shin teleporting up until this point, until he fused, and in Dragon Ball Super you can make the argument that he just learned the ability after he had defused from Kibito, because for whatever reason he didn't like the feeling. And he also does have some abilities, like the ability with whatever power he used right here to destroy blast, with Ki or whatever you would like to refer to it as. And he also has other types of magical abilities that allow him to paralyze people even stronger than himself, like Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, and who knows just how long he would actually be able to do this and how he could use it in battle. As I discussed in the theoretical fight between him and Piccolo, there's a chance he could have frozen Piccolo, chucked him right out of the ring, and won immediately. So you could argue that that's definitely something he could do, even against stronger opponents and stronger foes. And also, as a god of creation, Supreme Kai has the ability to manifest and create tangible objects out of seemingly thin air. Either that, or he reconfigures and recomposes all of the atoms into whatever he's trying to conjure at the time through his magical materialization. Like what we could see here, what he does with the Kachin metal. And perhaps, as I talked about in a video about Piccolo's clothes beam, he would actually be able to use this in an offensive way, perhaps even being able to generate a sword, like we saw one of the other Supreme Kais do when he fought against Kid Buu in the anime. But with all that being said, just how powerful is Creepy Shin? Well, let's discuss that in my conclusion. So how strong is Supreme Kai in Dragon Ball Z? Well, based upon all the evidence, I think it's clear that he is at least somewhat comparable to the Super Saiyans from the Buu saga. However, with that being said, I don't think that he's necessarily as strong as, let's say, any of the Super Saiyan 2s. I think that's pretty much proven when we see him getting constantly surprised by their power. Not just that, but a lot of people, like I've said in the past, think he's weaker than Pui Pui. They think that he isn't even necessarily as strong as Goku when he fought against Cell. But when you actually look at the feats on display here, it seems that he, in fact, would be stronger there, and maybe is is even comparable to regular Perfect Cell in terms of his overall power, at the very least close to that, considering everything that he's able to do and put up the fight he does against Buu comparative to how Gohan and Deborah performed, especially when we look at the anime version of the event. So he's definitely not weak compared to other characters in the arc, but when it comes to their highest level of powers, sure, he doesn't stand much of a chance. But that was the entire point, to show just how strong the characters had become at that point in the story, to where they were even surprising and surpassing the highest god at the time, and yet to show off at the same time the incredible power and evil nature of Majin Buu, who is stronger than all of them at the same time. But with all that being said, let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments. Make sure to subscribe and enable all notifications so you can stay up to date with all future videos like this. Leave a like, share the video out with friends so we can go even further beyond, and make sure to stick around because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.